Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. One of my favorite characters in the New Testament is Barnabas. His real name was Joseph, but he was called Barnabas, a name that means son of encouragement. It was a fitting name because just about every time you encounter Barnabas, he is in some way encouraging the church as a whole or an individual. Here's one small example mentioned in just a verse or two in Acts. After Paul's conversion, no Christians accepted him. I'm sure that makes sense to you. You have a guy going around persecuting and arresting Christians, and now he says he's a Christian, and that might just be a way to get in on the inside, find out who the Christians are, and then come and arrest them. Nobody wanted anything to do with him. As a result, he had been converted, but ended up going home to Tarsus because there was nothing else to do. But then Acts tells us Barnabas went to Tarsus, sought out Paul, and invited him to come with him to Antioch, where for a year they studied and taught the gospel together. Barnabas's encouragement of Paul resulted in the spread of Christianity all over the Mediterranean basin. As a side note, up until this point, Christians were called followers of the way. But in Antioch, where Barnabas and Paul were, people were first called Christians. Our goal this week, for our time together, is to walk through the life of Paul and somewhat try to put things in order for us. Along the way, we will see the importance of Paul's message and what it means for us. After about a year in Antioch, Barnabas and Paul were selected for a special mission. The book of Acts tells us that there were other strong believers there, but the Holy Spirit guided them to set Barnabas and Paul apart for a special work. Perhaps we should notice that at this point it is Barnabas and Paul, not Paul and Barnabas. Barnabas is understood to be the leader of the mission, and Paul is going with him. In not too much time, Paul's zeal for Jesus moves him to the forefront, so that after that, it is Paul and Barnabas. Paul becomes the leader and the spokesman. This special work that the Holy Spirit had in mind for them was to go on a missionary journey to spread the news of Jesus in other places. They first went to Cyprus and then up into what is Turkey today before returning to Antioch. In all these places, Jews were living there, part of what is called the diaspora. Paul and Barnabas would go to the synagogues and offer the good news of Jesus, and in most of those synagogues, they were rejected. Then they would begin to offer the good news to Gentiles as well. This was controversial, to say the least. Paul had learned, as we saw yesterday, that you can't limit God's grace, so he saw no reason to restrict the news of Jesus to Jews alone. However, the other early Christians, who had all been Jews first, did. The question raised, let's try that again, the question raged, was the Jesus, the Messiah, sent just to the Jews or to everyone? Finally, after Peter had an experience with a Roman centurion who had received the Holy Spirit just like the Jews who believed in Jesus did, they called an important council meeting in Jerusalem, and Paul was invited to defend his outreach to the Gentiles. When the conference was over, Paul's mission was affirmed. The official result was that Peter would be the chief missionary to the Jews and Paul to the Gentiles. Paul had the church's blessing to offer the grace of Jesus to everyone. Now again, there are some things we need to note in all of this. Paul and Barnabas were initially called by the Holy Spirit to go on that first missionary trip, and the church in Antioch confirmed it. That's really how it works today when we ordain pastors and deacons. Individuals have received a call from the Holy Spirit, but before it is enacted, the church confirms it in a service we call ordination. Some other things to think about are how Paul's background uniquely equipped him for this mission. He was raised as a Jew, but grew up in the city of Tarsus, which was a port city and very cosmopolitan. As he grew up, he encountered a wide variety of people from many nations arriving on ships, and his city was full of numerous cultures being observed and practiced. This background opened Paul to people who were different from him and paved the way for Paul to extend the gospel to them. He was ideally suited to bridge the cultural divides of the day. Even more, what all this points to is the global nature of the gospel. God is not exclusive, and neither is grace. All of us are God's children, and all of us are loved. The gospel is meant for all. It ended up that Paul and Barnabas split when Barnabas wanted to encourage a young John Mark, whom Paul wanted nothing to do with. There were other missionary journeys where Paul founded numerous churches, but on these he was accompanied by Silas. Maybe you've never thought about it, but the fact that you believe is a direct result of Paul's mission to the Gentiles that has been passed down to you. Barnabas encouraged. Paul preached. The Holy Spirit acted. Now you believe. Thanks for sharing these moments with me, and remember to let this day belong to God.